But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Greetings, fragile yet toxic males and self-hating and stupid females, and welcome to HBR News number 136, Kilroy, the corruption of internet porn, and Marvel gets new leadership, with the polecats, those critters who ferret out the best feels, funnies, and what the fucks to discuss Slam Bam Badger style. Mind your spines for the cringe, hold on to your sides for the lulls, and keep your chemo at the ready for this cancer. Today's polecat panel consists of, I know everyone's waiting with bated breath at what I'm going to call Max. Max Darrett, Simpsons canon, definitely not Chop Chop Master Onion. I'm not even going to explain that one. I'm just going to let that one lie. And for those of you who know who Chop Chop Master Onion is, you get a bazillion points from me. Our polecat punster and pussycat punisher Hannah, Dr. Randomercam, Evil Panda, Puppet Master, and Rabid Long Range Retortician. And me, the Supreme Doge in charge, who has reached the end of his journey, actually it's more like halfway, I'm going to go into that in a bit, through the self-poisoning process, only to get dragged back down by doing this show. Send nudes. Okay, aside from that, today we'll be discussing the following topics. Fox News wrote an article in the wake of all the sexual harassment and abuse allegations that have been circulating in politics and entertainment. Their take? It's porn that's making men rapey and disrespectful to the whammons. Did I mention this is a Fox News article and not Al Jazeera Plus? Not that there's much of a difference between them. Have you heard of the Kilroy Event? I assume that if we aren't the only people you are subbed to on YouTube, then you likely have heard of the Pro-Free Speech Panel event happening on April 21st and 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona of next year. We will be talking a little bit more about it today and perhaps our involvement with it. Marvel has been getting a lot of shit lately, specifically on its comics division. In fact, we here at HBR have gone through some of the feminist-driven tripe that they have been putting out well before all this Make Mine Milkshake business even was a spark in anyone's mind. But there is good news that we finally have to share with you guys. And finally, our bonus story for the patron-only after show. It's time for an online quiz. HowStuffWorks.com has made a in-depth and highly intellectual personality test that answers the question that I'm sure was burning on all of your minds. Can we on HowStuffWorks.com guess your personality based on how you perceive and treat the women's? Let's see how cancerous this quiz gets. Anyway, if you would like to participate in our after shows either as an audience member or a participant, please consider becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. If you don't want to wake up one morning and find yourself unable to find our content because YouTube finally dropped the guillotine on our channel, go to badgerfeed.com. We're going to be moving to a digest format for podcasting, so if you're listening to this in audio format and still want to follow our uncut live streams, you will be also able to find those at badgerfeed.com. Just go to badgerfeed.com. You should see it at the top of the screen there. Now, I wanted to give you guys, before we get into the topics, I wanted to give you guys another update on my cancer journey. So today I met with the surgeon that's going to be performing it's got like a long name. It's the surgery that involves removing the masses from my pelvis. There are 2 tumors that need to come out, and she's going to go in and take out everything that she can. This is going to involve an incision that starts at my sternum and goes all the way down to my pelvic bone. Fun times. They're essentially going to open me up, move all of my organs and bowels aside, and then get in there and cut out the cancerous parts. Then they're going to put all the stuff back in, add in a bunch of titanium clips, and stitch me back up, and then I'm going to be recovering for about 5 days. So,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so December, it's a tentative date to do all this stuff, December 15th. I may be in there longer because it should take a few days to recover, so I'll be in the hospital. And depending on, how fast I bounce back and I'm walking around and acting like a normal person again, that could be as soon as, say, a week after this is done. But it usually takes, walking around, it takes about a week. But before I'm actually feeling normal, it could take as much as a month or a month and a half. So I should be all fine and pretty normal well before Kilroy and well before ICMI 2018. But I wanted to let you guys know what's going on with that. In addition, I may also require another surgery where they go into my lung to essentially remove the scar tissue from the tumors that were there. On the plus side, though, the chemo has been super effective, and most of the tumors have essentially vanished, where the only thing that's left is a little bit of scarring. So there's just like 1 or 2 persistent ones that need to come out. So that's where that is. It's going to be a process. Basically, once I get back from the Calgary court thing, the moment I get back in the city, I'm going to be going to the doctor pretty much every day. I have to go in and get allergy testing and another CAT scan and a bunch of other tests done before they start the surgery. But this is essentially the next but also last leg of the cancer journey, and they're pretty confident that they can do this with minimal damage to other parts of me, because there's like nerves down there, and there's an aorta and other stuff that can be a bit risky. But considering where the tumor is and how small it's gotten, the surgeon says that she's pretty confident that she can do this, or she's going to do the best that she can. So there's that. I just thought I would let you guys know where that is.
Sounds like a lot, but that sounds like good news to me, dude. You're the fucking man. Just honestly, just
thank you.
Take all the time that you need just to make sure that you feel better once the relevant dates come up.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, cancer is cancer. So let's go into the stories now. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Mr. Max Derritt to give us the first one.
Yes.
About the Fox News story. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. Here's a different kind of cancer. Thankfully, a lot less lethal. And the kind that's, if you just sort of turn off your brain, you're able to actually laugh at. So today, as Brian mentioned before, we'll be discussing an article from foxnews.com that is particularly interesting. And why, you may ask? Well, it's an article you'd expect to see from Fox News, but it's also the opposite of an article you expect to see from Fox News. It's almost like reading an article on Jezebel.com that decries sexual harassment, right? But they're criticizing Bill Clinton. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm getting at? Anyways, the author of this article, Jared Brock, tries to explain why we are seeing so many stories in the news lately regarding sexual harassment in the media. His answer, porn. It's a Fox News article in the sense that it's trying to make a scapegoat out of a medium that doesn't deserve it, a la video games cause violence, but it's not a Fox News article because it's somewhat promoting sex-negative feminism, I guess you can look at it that way. Anyways, the article makes the following claims. 1, 90% of boys under the age of 18 have been exposed to pornography. 2, more than a third of... Wait, I didn't mean to write that as girls. More than a third of boys have seen sexual bondage online. 3, over half of those boys believe it's a realistic depiction of sex. Now, while the first claim is absolutely believable, I'm sure most of the people listening to the show right now can agree, his other 2 claims are not backed up with any evidence or citations whatsoever. In fact, the entire article is one giant opinion piece that makes most feminist articles look academic in comparison. Because, at least in feminist articles, a lot of them do cite statistics, even if the statistics are crap,
Yeah, or they're just citing each other.
Yeah, or they're just citing, citing stuff that's on a hard drive.
Yeah, or the statistics are gathered using methods designed to get those numbers and not designed to get accurate statistics.
Precisely, to push a particular agenda. So, fellow honey badgers, I ask you kindly to clear your heads before we go badgering the witnesses here. We don't want to give ourselves a stroke, you know. It's not like we're drawing a map of Hawaii here. Let's put forward our opinions in a civil way so that we don't have to engage in hand-to-gland combat. Somebody take this away from me while I go make a protein shake. Brian, do you want a Frappuccino? I'll be back in just. Okay.
Oh my god! Because
plenty of foam.
Nobody ever had sex before porn was invented. Yeah. I don't know how they came up with the idea for it because there wasn't anything to base it on. But obviously, humans were completely innocent of the notion of touching each other or themselves before there was porn. I mean, it's obviously the total cause of all human sexuality.
Yeah, except back then they used the power of imagination. Sorry,
no. They couldn't have because they don't have. What are they gonna figure it out based on? I mean, really, no precedent existed for it, right? I mean, people don't have sex naturally. Who came up with that idea?
I don't know. Maybe two chimps that accidentally bumped into each other the wrong way. Wait.
And
certainly
not how things are.
Accident.
Certainly not how things are done here. It's not how human beings have been produced and reproduced throughout our existence.
Although that is, sorry to keep interrupting you, but that does seem to be the way that it happens in Hollywood nowadays. Ew! Go ahead.
I don't know. This blows my mind that like all of a sudden, because in the last couple of centuries we've been able to produce images, through photographic and eventually video means, that is now the cause of human dysfunction and sexuality. That never happened before either, right? There was no sexual misconduct before people started looking at images and video of naked people. So all of the historical stories of rapes and people who have been coerced into sexual agreements and forced marriages and child marriages and all, none of that ever happened until there was porn.
What's really interesting is this guy is making the claim that internet porn is the cause, but these guys, these specific cases that are coming up, all these allegations, they're coming up that are, a lot of these are like decades old, way before there was internet porn. I mean, this misconduct, this person, the writer of this article, Jared Brock, is trying to connect these individuals in these individual industries to men in general. It's a questionable, link in the first place. A lot of these guys, this stuff is going way back to like the 80s, before we had internet in the same way that we do now, if we even had it at all. I know the internet's really old, but most people didn't have access to it back in those days, and it's only become mainstream now. That's one. And second, the reason why I chose this article is because despite, we know that Fox News is it's got a right-wing bias. We know that. Okay, that's pretty much plain and put out there. But I find it really interesting, if you read this article, how feminist it sounds. Now, I don't think that that's entirely, it's not surprising to me, because the thing is that feminism, especially sex-negative feminism, which is the kind of thing that's, that this article is sort of aping or echoing, is very, very similar to the same kinds of talking points. So, I wanted to show that for people that might be watching, that there's often, this idea that an extremely sort of, conservative point of view is somehow inherently anti-feminist. But as long as it's gynocentric, it will take on some of that. And as long as it blames men or puts men in the shaming category in terms of, we have to take porn away from boys because it turns them into predators, that is a feminist idea. And there's plenty of sex-negative feminists that would absolutely have written an article just like this one. if only the only thing that might be taken out is, where they're pointing the fingers in terms of individuals, because we know that Fox would like to make, say, Bill Clinton look bad because he's a Democrat or whatever, and maybe they'll ignore, some guys on their side of the fence that have been accused of stuff, whereas feminism would do the opposite. But because they have their biases, but they work with the same tools and they use the same talking points. And I'm not, I know that I'm talking in general here. I know that this is not the way it works on, with everyone on either side, but this is just to give you an idea that, men are not the friends of any particular side as long as it's useful to, throw them under the bus like this article does.
I guess the one thing to point out about it would be that feminism, particularly sex-negative feminism, and traditionalism have enough beliefs and enough attitudes, social attitudes in common, that you'll see them teaming up, essentially, when it comes to human sexuality.
Yeah, while also hating each other, but they believe a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
It's really strange.
Can I just say one thing in respect to what you just said, Hannah? I agree with you, but I'm actually curious as to what might happen in this particular situation, because whenever it comes to Fox News, anybody on under the typical feminist banner, they tend to be far right, right? And anything that comes out of Fox News is absolutely terrible, right? So I'm wondering if they were to look at this.
They would say the same things as each other while condemning each other for everything they say that they don't have in common. And Fox News really missed the mark on this. This is something that, okay, so when they say young boys, what age do they mean here? Because when I think
under 18.
Yeah, see, when I think of boys, teen boys, and young boys. Okay, now, in raising a boy, my son's computer access has never been available to him in a room that didn't have parents in it. Except at my parents' house now as an older teenager, and he's now an adult. Legally, he's an adult. And he's finishing his last year of high school this year. And this is something that, my husband and I both, agreed we didn't really want him wandering the internet where there are predators of all kinds, including financial, that we don't want him doing that, right, as a kid. And the kids never got online. None of our kids got online at home here without parental supervision when they were little, when they were young, and we don't intrude on their conversations or anything with their friends, but we know that when they're online with their friends, and not some spam scammer that's going to try to get money out of them, and not somebody that's going to try to get them to meet them somewhere and harm them, and not somebody that's going to be sending them shit that they shouldn't be seeing. And that's just parenting. It's what you're supposed to do. You protect your children and you guide them. And at this point, our kids are all adults, but as they got old enough to be able to make decisions and take an active engagement in their own self-defense, they were taught by us what to do if they were hassled online, if they were mistreated online, if they were suspicious of something that they encountered, anything like that. That's basically Fox News should have been making that case. Not the case that porn causes sexual misconduct, because sexual misconduct would exist without porn.
Not just sexual misconduct, but they're claiming sexual violence.
Yeah, sexual violence would exist without porn, and both sexes would do it without porn, and both sexes access porn, and both sexes seek it out during their teen years. I mean, I found, Playboy magazine in my teen years. You bet I read it cover to cover.
The articles are great.
Yeah, the articles are great. The jokes are hilarious, and the pictures are awesome. And they must be awesome again. No, the idea that these kids are accessing this because it's available, just because it's available, is bullshit. If kids are accessing this, and when I say kids, I mean kids, not 17-year-olds, but 7-year-olds and 12-year-olds, and and 13-year-olds that are getting online and seeing stuff like this because their parents are not paying attention to what they're doing online. The reason is because their parents are not paying attention to what they are doing online. And I mean, I've been saying this for years. I've been writing about this for years. When the Jesse Slaughter incident came out, I must have done 3 or 4 different posts on Gather.com. Isn't a social site anymore, and I'm not on it anymore, but it used to be anybody could write for Gather as long as you were a member of that site. And that was one of the things I focused on with that story. Was here was a girl who for those who don't know the Jesse Slaughter incident, this was a very
it's amazing,
confrontational little girl, and 4chan got a hold of her information because she was a fan of basically a dipshit local rock star that they wanted to basically razz. They wanted to troll this guy, and they were going to troll him with false allegations of pedophilia, which was really shitty. It was one I ended up not visiting the site for a long time after that. I was just kind of really disgusted by the whole thing. But they used her image, and she got very confrontational over it, and they're like, aha, new blood. And so they went after this kid, 11-year-old girl, and her family, and they ended up having to put her in a different home to put her in hiding because it was so vicious. And all of that happened because the child was not supervised properly by her parents, who didn't understand what the internet really is, much less what could happen with the child. It's like letting a child wander the streets of New York City, the entire city, unsupervised, and just hope she doesn't get hit by a car or kidnapped or worse. And it blows my mind that as long as it's been around, as long as people have been using it, we're now, with the 3rd generation of internet users, there are still parents that don't know any better than to let their kids get online unsupervised. And, I guess that's my rant on this.
Yeah.
They really missed that. You would think a conservative, family-oriented news site, their first approach if they're going to do a story about internet porn would be, parents need to pay attention to what their kids are doing on the internet.
Yeah.
Because I agree that 7-year-old kids, 12 and 13-year-old kids should not have access to porn. And teenagers, their parents should at least know what they're doing.
Yeah, but they're going the we have to hold the porn companies accountable. They're not. That's what this guy's doing. He's going more top down, I guess. And that's, of course, that seems to almost sound like, how do we limit people's access to porn without putting the responsibility in the hands of the individual consumers, like the parents, so that their kids don't access. There's lots of ways to do that. But then, they're going down that road of, porn creates sexual predators, just like video games create violent, school shooters and, the usual stuff that we hear about, like D&D, creates Satan worshipers and so on. And of course, it's always men who are the problem. It's the boys that watch it, even though we know there are female predators, even though we know that, there are women who have harassed men in all these industries, and especially in areas like academia. For some reason, we make a huge deal, 24-hour coverage of the stuff going on in Hollywood, but teachers have been doing this to their students for years and years and years, and it doesn't get this level of coverage. Why is that?
That's another thing. That's another thing. Nobody's looking into the histories of these guys. Toback actually gave a major clue in his conversation with some of the women that he harassed, and telling them that he started having sex with older women at the age of 12 to 13 years old. What he was saying was, I was raped by women as a teenager. I was statutorily raped as a teenager. And regardless of whether he thinks that could be considered consensual or not, he has gone down exactly the path that research shows happens when teen boys are raped. He had not only the sexual symptoms, the sexual misconduct symptoms, the desperation for attention, but also the substance abuse symptoms. And they may manifest differently in different people, but this is definitely something that should be discussed. It should be looked into, because I'll bet you if you look at a lot of the histories of the people that it's coming out that they have engaged in misconduct or aggression, that in their histories they may have experienced the same thing. If I remember right, it's come out that there's some abuse in Kevin Spacey's history too.
Oh yeah, likely in most of these cases there probably is. Another thing is that we're looking at a story in the middle, even when we find these people, because they have most of the time their own issues, and that's another reason why stories like this irritate the shit out of me. And they come from both sides, because men are that acceptable group of people that the left and the right can essentially shame into oblivion, for whatever reason. It's this idea that what's happening in cases like with the Kevin Spacey stuff, with the George Takei stuff, with the Harvey Weinstein stuff, whatever it is, it's that they will spin the narrative that this is a problem because men do this, because men treat women like sexual objects. It's literally a line from this very article, which makes me wonder, how the fuck is this on, again, not trying to give Fox News that much credit, but this it sounds like a Jezebel article when you read it. And it kind of blows my mind, because they're coming from the same angle. And I think it's just that when it comes to male perpetrators or the potential for it, both sides, just like a lot of blue pill people, they see that is a male problem and something that men do, and not individual men that have their own issues they're working through, or their own abuse history or whatever, but just all men as a group. And I wanted to add something else. I do think that there are issues with an excess of porn consumption. There's a guy named Martin Daubney, who I've been working to get on the show, who has done a lot of studies on addiction to porn. If you don't know who Martin Daubney is, you should look him up. He's a UK guy. I met him at the ICMI when I was in London the year before last, and I'm hoping that we'll see him again, because I'd like to get him on the show to talk to him. But the reason why I do think that there's something there to look at is not because of the usual narratives you get from feminists on the left and traditionalists on the right, where essentially an overconsumption of porn means that it's a danger to women, but rather because an overconsumption of porn could create problems for men and boys. And there are people, boys and men, who are addicted to porn or addicted to masturbation to the point where actually it creates issues for them, social issues, physical issues, depression, and so on. This is, if we're going to talk about an addiction to pornography or whatever, I would like to approach it from the perspective of trying to help boys who don't want that, who are struggling with that, but not because it can hurt the women's, because we need to help men. And I think that's the way to come at this. So just a couple things I wanted to say in relation to this. This is another reason why I think, obviously, they missed the mark here. And they should have done this better for a number of reasons.
They missed it big time.
Yeah.
This was really lazy reporting. I mean, really lazy. Not only should they have gone into the parental supervision end of it and looked at the history of histories of the people that are engaged in misconduct, but they should have looked into whether or not the decrease in father involvement in kids' lives has anything to do with this. Because with respect to the porn angle, kids being unsupervised online, and especially in the U.S., we now have more women becoming single moms by getting pregnant than becoming single moms through divorce, and it's been that way for years. If kids are unsupervised online and they're ending up with unsupervised access to things that they should not be exposed to at ages that are far too early to deal with them, it may be because they're in a situation where there's not enough people in the home to supervise them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and actually, in a lot of cases, there aren't. I mean,
You
how,
know,
how
and
many single mother homes do we have?
right. And then the other thing is, if this is boys dealing with their emerging sexuality through their puberty years, and they don't have a father in the home, who is going to be there to understand what they are going through? Because boys and girls go through puberty with some very dramatic differences in their experiences. I mean, we all experience changes. We all experience our voice changing. We all experience, you know, the crappy stuff, zits and stuff like that. But there are clearly things, I mean, just raising a boy, there are, and growing up with a brother, and growing up with like all the guys in the neighborhood being over at my house because they were my brother's buddies. It was very obvious that they dealt with things that I didn't. And it was very obvious that my son dealt with things that my daughters didn't. You know, girls aren't the only ones who have stuff that happened to them during puberty that don't happen to the opposite sex. That goes both ways. And there are things that a dad is really important for all of a child's life. But for a boy going in puberty, there are things that he needs from a dad that a mom can't even begin to try to pick up the slack for if the dad's not there. You know, there's not even a hint of a woman being able to understand what he's going through because it's an alien experience for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this may be an area where they really should have looked at father involvement. They really should have. If they were, and this is two separate issues. If they were going to talk about, it was like they just mashed two things together. Extremely lazy reporting. If they were going to talk about boys' access to porn, you know, that should have gone the parental route.
I wonder if I wonder if they're pandering a bit to the feminist narrative.
No, I think they probably rushed a story out and said a bunch of traditionalist stuff, and they're probably pandering to a traditionalist Christian conservative audience, thinking that they can rush this stuff out and their audience will not be upset that they didn't mention parents. Well, I grew up in a Christian conservative home, and I find that to be disgustingly lazy reporting. So I don't know if the general public that didn't also grow up in a journalistic home is going to feel the same way. But personally, as a parent who grew up with Christian conservative values, I think the article is shit. That if they didn't mention parental supervision and they didn't mention the importance of fathers during a boy's development, they didn't mention the fact that this can happen to girls too, and they didn't mention, you know, any of the important family aspects of this. That's just lazy ass reporting. So
yeah, so there you go. The right fucks up too.
I could do a better. Sorry.
Go ahead, Max.
I can do a better job reporting on this sort of stuff, and I could do it with one hand. And actually, that wasn't meant to be a pun. I'm sorry.
Article requested.
Oh my god.
No, but look,
seriously, article requested.
just you should just rub one out, Max. An article, that is.
Yes, of course.
This one, yeah.
But yeah, just one quick thing. It's just like this sort of thing pisses me off because this article is so piss poor, and this guy gets paid likely to write shit like this, where there's absolutely nothing beyond his own personal interpretation of what the hell's going on. I can do that sort of thing, and I'd love to be able to get paid for it because everything that I say is right. But anyways, that's besides the point. And, you know, Simpsons kin knowledge. But honestly, I've been trying to gain a career in the journalistic field for the past couple of years. That's essentially what I've been trying to do, specifically in movies, but also in politics and stuff like that. And it's nearly impossible. And it's because dickheads like this are taking up all the space where they don't even have the capacity to know how to use Google Scholar, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Anyways, well, but yeah, just
casting couch, Max. Casting couch. Yeah. You know,
hey, man.
I mean, you're not gay, but $20 is $20. That's what I'm saying.
I weep for your past. And by the way, just Hannah, in respect to that whole Jesse Slaughter thing, it's interesting that you bring that up, and you obviously have more knowledge about this. Did the dad ever backtrace it? She gets
consequences will never be the same, Max. Never.
Yeah, they all done goofed. They all done goofed.
Yeah, and one I did want to say something else about this, but shit, if I did not forget. Well, I do, like I said, you know, that The oh yeah, I was talking about the pandering. The thing about the right wing when they talk about sexuality and stuff, and the feminist sort of narrative comes up, it's often because even if they strongly disagree with feminists and they make fun of them and they pwn them on videos on YouTube or whatever, you ever seen those YouTube channels where it's like they have like the Tucker Carlson arguing with a feminist or something, and they take delight in that. The downside, or the thing that they don't see, is that even if they disagree with them, or at least they think they do, they're playing by the feminist rules. They're well within those borders. So if you try to introduce these ideas that exist outside of it, like what values men have and how masculinity is not defined in sort of like what the right puts it, which is kind of a small box, but it's also not the way feminists think it should be, which is everything outside of that box, but it should be done on an individual basis. Or the idea that there is a church of women worsting, that I know that we've talked about this a lot on the show, and the left made it strong, but the right lives within it. Even if they don't agree with it, they work within those rules. They still play by the framework. That's why they're not going to change anything. They're what they want is not going to happen because we're too far along, and they need to wake up too. And this article shows that. I mean, this is just one person, but obviously it got past enough of the editors, and they gave it the green light, and they said, yeah, we'll put that up there. Yes, this is violence against women. That women are indeed objectified, etc. So Mr. Monkey Lynn says, careful, Doge, a straw man is strong in your argument. Could you extrapolate that for me, please? I'm going to go through some super chats briefly, and then if any of you guys want to respond or say anything else, go ahead and get in there. So Derek Burge gave us 10 euros and says, can't be on due to time zone issues. So I'm going to give you an early super chat. Thank you, Derek. The one thing the left and the right can agree on is that men cannot be allowed to seek sexual gratification without a woman's express permission. Okay, so when I see what you're saying, it's essentially men's sexuality is something that should not be, I don't think you're allowed to celebrate it in the same way, like as a man. It's seen as something that needs to be constrained or controlled because it can be dangerous in the eyes of the left and the right. It's just that some of them, the left is a lot more man-hating, but the right still wants to control male sexuality. The right still goes by this assumption that men are inherently, they have inherent negative qualities that need to be reined in, and then the positive ones, sort of encouraged to flourish. So I'm going to look at to see if anybody said it. Blanket statements about the right wing. No, I know it's not. I'm talking about right-wing news outlets. Don't worry. I'm not talking about the right wing in general. I know that I don't mean it that way. And I'm actually the same way with the left. I try not to speak in blanket statements, but in generalities. And when I'm talking about journalists specifically, so I am talking about journalism here. All right. Joey Jojo gives us $5 and says, porn is basically cuckoldry, which is watching another man fuck a woman. Also, the women in porn were abused in their lives according to your brain on porn. Okay. Well, I mean, there are a lot of people in the porn industry that have issues of their own that they're dealing with, but I don't know what the numbers are, so I'm not going to delve too much into that because I don't want to pretend to understand where such a thing comes from. Like Hannah said, porn has existed likely in some form or another even before we had media. Like electronic media like we have now.
You ever see those Egyptian hieroglyphs?
Yeah.
Kind of hot.
Cartoons. They probably had live shows in Greece or something. Who knows? They probably didn't call it Greece for nothing.
Greece is the word. For a reason.
Break Here gives us $10. Thank you, Break Here. It says, I keep telling everyone to just do a yiff, but no one listens to me. I'm not even gonna go down that road.
What?
But thank
What's
you
a yiff?
It's a furry thing. That's all. I don't know much else. I don't know much else about it. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's sexual. Okay. Does anybody else have any other comments? Go ahead, Hannah.
I got one more thing to point out. I did notice in the article they brought up bondage as though bondage is an abnormal thing. And again, I'm going to say it doesn't matter if you're into it or not. It's not abnormal. There are plenty of people who are, and that's been under attack. Well, it's been under attack for quite a long time. I mean, it was one of the things that was controversial during the Betty Page hearings and everything. But then they bring that up like it's abnormal, and like that exposing boys to that is going to cause all of the problems. Like not that I would want a kid seeing that because they're not old enough to have any capacity for contextualizing it, but then they don't bring up 50 Shades. And obviously 50 Shades of Grey was not like the bondage community really criticized that book, but its popularity is an indication that it's not abnormal to have an interest in it. And obviously it's not abnormal for girls to have an interest in it either. And you would think that would be another thing they would have discussed in this article. That not so much that it's normal for kids to look at this stuff, but it is normal for people to have an interest in it, and it shouldn't be treated like its existence is a cause for sexual assault. In fact, it's to my understanding, it's the opposite, and it's been explained to me a couple of times in a couple of different forums that if feminists really wanted a functional way to promote their consent narrative, they would take their cues from the bondage community, because in a circumstance where you're playing at aggression in a sexual relationship, you have to have that down, especially if you're playing at ignoring consent, but you're actually trying to keep the encounter consensual. That's why safe words exist, So the idea that they've approached this and then just given it a brief mention and not delved into that at all. The more I think about this story, the more I see in this story, the more I'm thinking, God, this is lazy. This is sadly, disgustingly lazy. Because they looked at areas and touched on different areas without consent and never actually did a full exploration of the topic. And they had 2 or 3 topics here that they should have covered separately from each other, and as maybe related topics, but not jammed them all into this same story like this. And they didn't even use lube.
Yeah. My safe word is Benedict Cumberbatch.
My safe word is anti-disestablishmentarianism.
My safe word is yes.
Benedict Cumberbun. Oh, okay. Well, you guys are writing more words for Benedict Cumberbatch in the chat, because I'm sure you will. Go ahead, Hannah. We're going to go on to the next story, but...
I was just going to say there's comments that people saying they've heard that the BDSM community are really pissed about 50 Shades. There's a few people have mentioned that. Yeah, there were several articles, and some of them were pointed out to me because I had been bringing up 50 Shades, and people didn't want it associated with the actual bondage movement, because it's the way it's apparently written about in the book. And I don't know enough about the writing in the book because it's not my kind of reading anyway. But I mean, there has to be a good story with it, right? But in any case, to my understanding, they didn't do it right. So it shouldn't be associated at all with BDSM. But the fact that girls and teenage girls and women bought that book in such huge numbers and went to see the movies, and now there's another book, I guess, and another movie and all that, that demonstrates that this is not something abhorrent to women. That women are not appalled and terrified by the idea of BDSM. And if you look at, there's quite a bit of involvement by women, and that's by choice. So clearly, it is not a big, scary, nasty thing that women are trying to get away from. Not everybody's into it. That's okay. We don't all have to be into the same thing. But it doesn't make it a bad thing because some people aren't into it. Hell, there's a lot of things I'm not into that I don't think are a big deal if other people are, as long as they don't ask me to do it and then get upset when I say no. You know, but this is, yeah, they were very upset. They were very insulted.
Mm-hmm. Benadryl Cabbage Patch. That's another one.
There's do you put the Benadryl in Jello? Jello shots? I had to.
Buffalo custard bath. All right, so moving on to the next story. The Kilroy Event. Crowdfunding for the pro-free speech gathering known as the Kilroy Event has started earlier this week. The Kilroy Event, which is the brainchild of YouTubers Dave Computing Forever Cullen and Based Mama, both of whom were guests on our show, is slated to take place on April 21st. Oh, yeah, for sure. And 22nd. So April 21st and 22nd of 2018 at the Sheraton Grand Phoenix Hotel in Phoenix, Arizona. The event is hoped to be the largest international gathering of pro-free speech advocates as of yet. As stated on their website, the Kilroy Event is an attempt to, quote, begin pushing back against the tyranny of the minority by giving a voice to the silenced majority, end quote. The list of those invited to speak includes such popular internet figures as Blair White, Carl Benjamin, that would be Sargon of Akkad in case you don't know, Andrew Torba, Tim Pool, and many more. As of the writing of this article, the Kilroy Event currently sits at 62% of the way funded, only needing a little bit more than $32,000 in order to be completely funded. So I wanted to shill this because I am also going to be, well, hoping to go to the Kilroy Event. I'm actually one of the speakers there. I didn't even know I was, which is kind of funny, but yeah. Well, then I saw Sargon's This Week in Stupid, and he was scrolling through everyone, and I was there, and I was like, oh, I guess I am going to be at this thing. So, yeah, I'm going to be going, but I do have something in mind, and maybe this is one of the reasons why I want to bring it up, is first off to shill it to you guys. So if you can help out with the Kilroy Event, please do. Either give what you could or just share it around. You know, they're already 64.6% to their goal at $54,000 or $54,950 specifically. Help them get all the way there. I think that it's probably going to work out. It's only been out for a week and we're already pretty far along. So I plan on going. I'm actually talking to Allison about going too. I think that we're going to try and get, as many badgers as we can to go to this event. But right now we're a bit focused on the court thing, which is right around the corner. But once that's over, depending on how well it goes, of which I'm relatively confident that I think we're going to do fine, we will be looking at the Kilroy Event as well. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on the Kilroy Event in general. Hey, Mike, are you going to go? Do you want to come to the Kilroy Event?
Yeah, hell yeah. I think my April's clear.
Yeah, okay. So there you go. Dr. Random McCann will probably be going. How did your, because you were at the, there was a men's gathering was it last weekend in the UK?
It was, yeah. It was like 2 days ago down in London for International Men's Day. And I did a speechy thing. It went all right. Yeah,
your speechy thing went all right? And that was the first time you ever did that?
First time I ever did it seriously, yeah. Normally I have the safety blankets of comedy and music, but I had to say something serious. But yeah, I've uploaded the video already.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
the sound quality is a bit shit, but yeah.
There you go. You guys can take a look at Mike's video on his channel after this stream is over. So don't go now, please. It'll hurt my feelings. But yeah. So what about you, Max?
What about me?
You should get a passport and come and come down to the Kilroy event so we can meet up.
Oh, sure. I mean, like, I'd love to meet you guys one day. The only problem is I don't have money.
Yeah, I know that feel.
And plus, I'm just more so saving up because I'm currently in a long distance relationship, and I want to bring my girlfriend over from Romania. Yeah, because like we met up this past summer, but I'd like to continue that. Hopefully, maybe one day we can live together. That whole thing. But one quick question: why the hell is it called Kilroy Event?
I bet Hannah knows.
I was just gonna say to the organizers of the event, Domo arigato. Oh God, I don't even know how to begin to explain this. And it's been so long since I've actually watched the movie that I'm not sure I could go through and explain the plot properly now. I mean, obviously the Styx album, listen to that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But particularly Mr. Roboto was one of my favorite songs when I was young. But no, I'm just gonna say that look it up. The best thing, look it up.
Well, here
and watch the movie.
Yeah. I can help you out a little bit here. So I'm on this website called Mental Floss, and it asks the question, what is the origin of Kilroy Was Here? Which is an old drawing of a guy peeking over a wall with his nose hanging over, and it's really old. So reader Alec wrote in and said, I'd like to know the origin of Kilroy Was Here. I saw this all over Germany as an army dependent in 1954. Does it originate in World War II? Maybe you bumped into Kilroy. He's bald. A bald gentleman with a big nose drawn peeking over a wall. Next to him is usually the phrase, Kilroy was here. He can be found all over the world and went viral long before social media or the internet was around, finding his way through the theaters of war with American troops during World War II. One of his most daring appearances may have been at the Potsdam Conference in 1945. During the summit, Harry Truman, Winston Churchill, and Joseph Stalin had exclusive use of a VIP bathroom. One day, Stalin reportedly used the facilities and came out demanding to know from one of his aides who Kilroy was, having found the drawing on one of the walls. He wanted to send Kilroy to the gulags, apparently, but couldn't find him. Kilroy does not appear to have originated entirely with U.S. servicemen, though. A similar doodle, known as Mr. Chad, was scrawled throughout Britain as a comment on shortages and rations during the war. Chad was similar in appearance to Kilroy, but was accompanied by a different message. Wat no tea? That's what the message was. Chad predates Kilroy by a few years and may have been created by British cartoonist George Chatterton in the late 1930s. As best as anyone can tell, at some point during the war, American soldiers borrowed Mr. Chad's image and married it to their own name and phrase, Kilroy was here. If the man in the drawing was a variation on Mr. Chad, then where did the name Kilroy come from? While the Oxford English Dictionary writes Kilroy off as a mythical person, dozens of real people claim to be the doodle's namesake in 1946, when the American Transit Association held a radio contest to establish the origin of the phrase. One of them was James J. Kilroy, who worked at the Bethlehem Steel Shipyard in Quincy, Massachusetts during the war, inspecting the work done by others on the tanks and hulls of warships. As Kilroy explained to the ATA, quote, I started my new job with enthusiasm, carefully surveying every inner bottom and tank before issuing a contract. I was thoroughly upset to find that practically every test leader, the head of a work crew, every test leader I met wanted me to go down and look over his job with him. And when I explained to him that I had already checked the job and could not spare the time to crawl through one of those tanks again, he would accuse me of not having looked the job over. I was getting sick of being accused of not looking the jobs over, and one day, as I came through the manhole of a tank I just surveyed, I angrily marked with yellow crayon at the tank top where the tester could see it, Kilroy was here, as in, I've already done this. The following day, a test gang leader approached me with a grin on his face and said, I see you looked my job over. I nodded in agreement. Kilroy provided the ATA with corroborating statements from men he worked with at the shipyard and said that he assumed that shipyard workers who had seen his mark and then joined the military took the phrase with them and began writing it in Europe. He won the contest and the grand prize, a full-size trolley streetcar. Just a few days before Christmas, the 12-ton car was delivered to Kilroy's home in Halifax, Massachusetts, where it was attached to the house and used as living space for 6 of his 9 children. So, that's the story of Kilroy. But
That's really neat.
yeah, so it was something from well, apparently from World War II. And Stalin was not happy when he saw it. It essentially implies that someone was there before him, and I guess that
So
they
by
might not
having-
be in the party, which, you know, would be bad. So
So by having Kilroy, naming the event Kilroy, they're essentially pissing off the people that might lean towards a political temperament that Stalin had. Is that the idea?
I think so, but I'm not sure. The
That's
Kilroy
kinda
thing
clever.
kept going. I think it went through the 60s and stuff. And to what Hannah's saying,
Yeah,
there's
this
a reference to it from like is it Styx?
Actually, there was a movie, Mr. Roboto, I think was like the name of the movie. Gotta remember. But and it sort of dealt with totalitarianism, and let's see if I can. If you look at the videos for Mr. Roboto, that'll give you sort of a rundown of what I'm talking about, and it.
Also,
I haven't found online
yeah,
what I'm looking for. Damn it!
The,
But, yeah,
you might
this
want to
is
look.
just-
It's either a movie or like a live thing. Because I remember when Styx they were trying to make an album that was more like an opera.
An opera,
Yeah.
and there was a story that went along with it, essentially. And I'm trying to remember where I saw it. But I mean, we're talking a very long time ago.
The great
Right, it wasn't a movie, but there was a thing I saw on TV. I'm remembering a documentary on the album, but because I'm looking at it now, and it's Kilroy was here, 1983, and so I told you it was a long time ago. But it was at the Paradise Theater, and the idea was. Yeah, it was the idea was a guy framed for murder trying to clear his name, and he was trying to get from one place to another, and it's all, like I said, it's been so many years since I saw it, I can't remember the whole thing, but it dealt with issues of sort of totalitarianism and oppression by a government entity and so on. And so it is a related thing, because it dealt with sort of bucking those systems and fighting back. So it'd be worth watching. And like I said, it's Kilroy was here in 1983, and geez, it's been so long since I've seen it, and I couldn't really tell you much more about it. Paid more attention to the album than but it was referencing. And yeah, Kilroy was in a suit. Somebody says, Aguirre says, wasn't Kilroy in the suit at the end in the Roboto body? And yeah, it was. He was.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a reference to the military end of it.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to try to explain it because, like I said, the last I even remember looking this stuff up and revisiting it was when I was in college on my college radio station, and I used to play Styx's albums. That wasn't even their best stuff, but it was the stuff that was sort of their most well known for people that listened basically to pop music on the radio. So yeah, that's basically where the pop reference to it comes from, but it does go back to the military history.
Yeah, and the military symbolism was essentially them saying, you know, like it's like you're saying, I'm behind enemy lines, I'm going to leave a note here. And so I think that, you know, with the reason why they're going with this, they're calling it the Kilroy event, could be a combination of all of those things. So,
well, we are definitely behind enemy lines at this point.
Exactly.
No matter where we go.
Yeah, so guys, consider getting tickets if you want to see us, because I'm going to go. I'm going to try to you know, if at all possible, I'm gonna try to drive down. I'd love to go to Arizona. I have friends there, and yeah. Also, I think Razorfist is supposed to be there, so I want to meet him. He's a cool dude. So, and I hadn't seen Sargon since VidCon, so that would be cool too. All right, so I got another super chat from Joey Jojo. Gives us $2. Thank you, Joey Jojo, and says, "I didn't know women liked porn. Weird." Oh yeah, they totally do, dude. And we have one from the Great Outdoors, or the Great Indoors rather, €2, and says, "Turk 182 was here." So, does anybody else have any thoughts on the Kilroy event before I move on? I just wanted to shill it. I figured I could make it a story.
If the amount of time is available for it, road trip.
Yes, that'd be cool.
Give me money so I can go.
There we go.
Do you have a passport, Max?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. Just checking. I didn't. Get
yeah, I went to Austria this past summer.
Oh, that's right. You did leave the country. Yes, that's good. Yeah, because I didn't get a passport until the very first time I left the country and needed to. And that was when I went to Calgary the first time. I had to get a passport before I did that. Yeah. I mean, because I went to Canada once before, like in the early 2000s, but back then you could, or maybe even before that, but I know that at the time you didn't need a passport to get into Canada from the US.
No.
There was a time, I know, but after 9/11, well, it became more difficult.
Yeah.
So,
see, I was lucky. I only had to renew a passport. I had one from in '94. I went to Japan. I went to Hokudan-cho and I went to Tokyo. Hokudan-cho isn't called Hokudan-cho anymore. I guess it merged with another town and took that town's name. But I went there, and of course my passport was expired by the first time I went to a honey badger event. But all I had to do was go in. I didn't have quite the same amount of paperwork and evidences that I had to produce in order to get a replacement for an expired passport that I would have had to do had I never had a passport before.
Hey,
so
sorry, did you say what was it?
Hokudan-cho.
Oh yeah, I know that. If it hadn't been for Hokudan-cho, I'd been married a long time ago. No?
That
all right, I got a couple more super chats. Ryan Field gives us $2 and says Killjoy wasn't here. Oh, but there may be. Hopefully, we don't have any Killjoys at the Kilroy event. That wouldn't be fun. I mean,
that'd be an interesting thing, though. I could just usually, these people show up at various events and try to get people like us thrown out. I guess the way they deal with events when they can't do that is to show up at the various venues and try to get the event canceled. I wonder what approach they could possibly take to sound legitimately offended and upset that people are going to go talk about free speech and issues with attacks on free speech. Are they going to be able to unironically argue that a free speech convention doesn't need to happen because free speech isn't under attack? Because if they do and they try to get the event shut down, they'll be proving our point.
Exactly. I mean, it doesn't stop them from doing that anyway, but... All right, 2 more super chats. Joseph Bellavance gives us $10 Australian. Thank you, Joseph, and says, I supported your trip to Australia. Sorry I could not visit due to a wedding. Sad Melbourne did not work out. Frowny face. Oh, Joseph, I'm sorry then. Thanks for helping us get to Australia. Too bad you didn't come meet with us. We were in Melbourne, weren't we? You go to Melbourne? Yeah, I think we were there for a meetup. It was a good time. Maybe next time, Joseph, we can see you then. Since you helped us, we should have been able to shake the hand of the man that helped us get there. And Hoki Biku, I can never pronounce this one. Hoki Bukisa gives us $2 and says Fag. That's it, Fag. Thank you, Hoki, for that. All right, we're gonna go on to the last story. Well, there's another story. We got another one, but here's the last one that I had planned before the breaking story came. Goodbye, Axel Alonso. Hello, CB Cebulski. While Marvel Comics is still killing it in theaters, almost 10 years after Iron Man came out in 2008, do you feel old yet? Yeah, 2008 was when the first Iron Man came out. That's 10 years ago, almost. The comics themselves are in a serious sales decline since the growing trend of what has come to be known as SJW comics have been getting pushed into the forefront. But there might be a light at the end of the tunnel. Axel Alonso, editor-in-chief at Marvel Comics, has parted ways with the company. He is being replaced not by the current second-in-command and make-mine-milkshake white knight Tom Brevoort, but in a surprising turn of events, the job is going to one C.B. Cebulski. Why is this good? Well, Axel Alonso is a very vocal, diversity-obsessed social justice warrior who, as a consequence, found himself embroiled in controversy time and again. Some examples include April of this year when Marvel took a beating on social media after seeming to link poor sales to a lack of enthusiasm for newer characters who were female or had diverse backgrounds. The New York Times wrote an article claiming that it was only a few retailers who expressed this, and as such, it was not the real reason for the sales in decline, further claiming that Marvel has always been diverse, but they cleverly leave out the fact that diversity is not the issue, the ham-fisted writing and obvious agendas pushing that sacrifice good stories for virtue signaling, while simultaneously hiring diverse writers and artists who are bad at what they do, but are the right skin color, gender, or sexual orientation. To quote Aidan Paladin, Marvel does not have a diversity problem, it has a pandering problem. In May of 2015, Captain America's temporary alignment with Hydra, a Nazi-like organization, was received so poorly that Marvel had to release a statement indicating to readers that the good Captain would return. Quote, "We want to assure all of our fans that we hear your concerns about aligning Captain America with Hydra, and we politely ask you to allow the story to unfold before coming to any conclusion." End quote. Captain America's heroism was restored this past August. I smelled backpedaling. Alonso, in an effort to repair the plummeting sales, started a series called Generations, where the new diverse Marvel characters would meet with the classic ones in a bid to satisfy their disgruntled audience and customer base. It failed because in most cases it was just stories of old characters needlessly and undeservedly praising the new replacements. A comment made under the Marvel promotional video for the Generations event had this to say, quote, "Let's be clear, this clip was made in response to dropping sales and backlash of recent Marvel comics. As a longtime Marvel fan who stopped buying and reading your comics, I have this to say. By making female versions of Thor, Hawkeye, or Wolverine, and different race versions of heroes such as Cap or Hulk, you are not making them likable. You are portraying women and minorities as weak and unoriginal individuals stealing our childhood heroes. It has nothing to do with racism or sexism. Create original characters or use some of the old ones, and not replace the old ones. If Harry Potter would be replaced by a white surfer boy from California, there would be backlash. If they made Han Solo a bearded redhead with an Irish accent, there would be backlash. Nobody likes an imposter. How hard is this to understand? And do you really think having the 2 times of every hero, I think he means double of every hero, is a good idea? If the sales are any indicator, Alonso is no longer with the company, and Brevoort is not replacing his position because his vision does not reflect what the consumers want, and either Marvel, people that are way up top, or Disney itself felt as if something had to change. Now, Alonso's successor, C.B. Cebulski, who has worked with Marvel since 2002, initially wrote for their Mangaverse line. Cebulski later went on to have an important role in launching The Runaways and other successful comic book titles. Cebulski left Marvel to pursue freelance work in 2006, but returned within a year. In 2010, Cebulski was promoted to Senior Vice President of Creator and Content Development. Last year, Cebulski was sent to Shanghai to help develop the company's brand in Asia. Cebulski has seen some failures in his career, but he seems like a genuine comics nerd, something we need right now, and despite his failures, he has worked really hard to learn from them. He also doesn't seem like an overly PC SJW type either, as he has said the following, quote, "I want to make sure that I have books like Ms. Marvel and Black Widow that I'm proud about and could give to my daughter. But at the same time, I don't want to be the PC police and say you can't be naughty, you can't be fun," end quote. And with regards to sexuality in characters, he says, quote, "I don't want to run away from sexy characters, but I think that there's a difference between characters being sexy and being gratuitous. It comes down to context. I won't say we won't do sexy female characters, because I think that's preposterous and ridiculous. For one thing, it's in the eye of the beholder, end quote. Perhaps Cebulski can save Marvel if he takes that attitude of just having fun and focusing on good stories while allowing his team creative freedom. There is already a lot of excitement around these changes, and one can only hope we will see the Goliath return to its former glory. However, CB isn't going to be cleaning house of the ideologues who work there now, and there are still many who are on books that have some pretty radical regressive notions while not bringing a lot of quality to the work that they create. One such example, as we wrap this thing up, is Marvel's editor for the queer, lesbian, Latinx heroine cringe fest, America Chavez. Yes, all of that is true about this book. It is terrible. So the editor, Sarah Brunstad, who admitted to using comics to forge social justice warrior propaganda in a letter, said the following, quote, "Comics are the medium for the revolution," end quote. While Cebulski is certainly still a blue-pilled guy, if he wants to be moderately progressive without taking people's fun away, he has a long road ahead of him. Good luck, man, and make Marvel great again.
Look, any change is a good change from what Marvel has been doing in the last few years. I'll say this. I definitely think this is a step in the right direction. As somebody who doesn't read comics at all, I think I've only ever read two. Well, they're kind of graphic novels. I've only ever read Watchmen and V for Vendetta, right? But I know who the Runaways are. And out of all the characters that have come out in the last 10 years, I think Runaways is the only property that I can think of that was apparently really, really good and well received by a lot of people that came out in comic form, in that medium, right? So if you're going to have that guy sort of be the head of a whole bunch of this stuff right now, that's definitely a very good replacement.
Yes, I'm, again, he's not like red pilled or anything like that. Not that that's what you need, but he does seem like, despite his beliefs, he would rather focus on good storytelling and having fun rather than pushing political identity politics, which is definitely something that, Axel Alonso and his subordinate Tom Brevoort, who was basically next in the chain of command, but did not get the job. Those guys were very much SJWs. And the people that they hired and the kind of books that they edited were a lot of where you guys got this ideological shit from. So I'm glad that it looks like they're, someone, either the person who owns Marvel, whose name I can't remember right now, there's a CEO. So it was either coming from there or it came from Disney. But there are certainly changes that are being made. So this is good. This is a win. And it also shows that the market does speak. And when the market speaks, companies have to listen, because the sales were going into the toilet. You can even make now this is a bit of a tangent, but I would also make the same comparison to all of the shit that's been going on with this Star Wars Battlefront 2 thing, with the microtransactions and, all that. I don't know if you know much about that, Max, but the way that they have been modeling their model for downloadable content and shit, it has not worked out for them, and they've had to backpedal. And I think that this is essentially similar in terms of the market speaking. So
it's fucking glorious that, by the way, the fact that EA actually has the capacity to listen to their consumers to some extent, even though they're not really.
Yeah. Because
if they had ever actually listened to their fucking consumers, they would know that all anybody ever wanted out of Battlefront was for them to take Battlefront 2, the OG Battlefront 2, back from the original Xbox
that's all they gotta
PS2
do.
days,
That's all they gotta
and
do.
then give it new graphics. There you go. Greatest game of all fucking time.
Absolutely. Just sharpen it up. But again, LucasArts is basically what? They're gone. They're essentially EA now. So Hannah, you had your name in the chat.
Yeah, I got a couple of things to say. The first one, obviously, it has to do with Sarah Brunstad's letter to the editor, and by saying, for the revolution, they are the medium for the revolution. Does she realize what she gave away there about what they're actually trying to do? That they're not writing stories. They're not participating in the medium. They're exploiting it for a political narrative. But on top of that, using the phrase the revolution to describe what they're doing. What she just admitted is that we are in a cold civil war.
Absolutely.
We're not shooting at each other with guns. Well, and we've had some incidents, obviously, but I mean, we're not shooting at each other with guns the way that happened during the original Civil War in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
We're not, brother against brother in opposite trenches on the opposite sides of a field firing at each other. But if the social justice ideological umbrella, if the groups that are amassed under that umbrella consider this a revolution, that is a civil war. You cannot have a revolution without going up against the people that are not wanting to participate in your revolution. And half the population doesn't, or more. We're in a situation where we have a vocal, authoritarian minority that is trying to control the entire country and trying to control the direction of the country's politics, trying to control the social evolution of the country, and so on. And to deal with this, they're engaging in essentially a propaganda wave. They're dealing with lobbying. They're dealing with not just legislative lobbying, but policy in every organization and institution they can infiltrate. That is a cold civil war. That is a takeover effort. You are up against an army. And it may not be an army that knows how to handle a gun, but they definitely know how to handle information in a way that can be influential, at least to a degree and for a period of time. And if they can do it long enough, effectively enough, they get the control they want, and then they can put down the other side.
As long as they're silencing you while they're at it, too.
Right, and that is one of the reasons why this free speech event, that's why the Kilroy event is so important. There needs to be not necessarily an equal and opposite effort from the other side, but a great deal of visibility on the other side. Businesses and institutions that are being approached by these folks need to recognize that they don't represent the majority of the population, that this is not what necessarily Americans want, this is not necessarily what Canadians want, this is not necessarily what you want. If you don't want to be silenced, you have to speak up. The other side of this is that she's basically using this is very Marxist phrasing. Now, I'm not going to necessarily say that all SJWs are commies, because that's not true. But I think this woman probably is. And here she is having to rely on a capitalist medium to get her point across. She's using comics, a for-profit industry that is... I don't think it would be tolerated. I don't think comic books would be tolerated at all in a totalitarian, communist, or socialist regime. And here she is. This is the medium for the revolution. She just admitted that she's trying to create the same thing as, those chick pamphlets that admonish you to stop being a sinner.
Yeah.
Out of comic books, in order to promote an ideology that is largely based in a political ideology that would never tolerate the existence of this industry. That's hilarious.
Yeah, and Brian, where have we seen that before? Oh, I have an agenda. Yeah, so what?
Yeah, exactly. And
say who am I talking about?
Oh, shit. Who wouldn't we be talking about? We know Leigh Alexander. Leigh Alexander comes to mind. But
yes, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, Leigh Alexander, who I hope is okay, and she has her breathing machine with her at all times. But yeah, no, I think that she doesn't. I don't think these people care that people know. And I think that they find the idea of being a part of a revolution to be really romantic. So at the very least, if they're like out and out, you know, helicopter worthy communists, they're at least these kinds of people that, you know, the only job they want to change the world, but the only job they can get is editing comic books. So they try to like use that as the vehicle to which to change the world, you know, and they buy into all the bullshit about how important their job is. So, but again, you know, there's some, you know, we got some good here potentially. We got some more neckbeard representation in because I don't think there's enough neckbeards in positions of power. So we have a little bit more diversity there in terms of neckbeardiness is concerned. And well, I hope that, you know, the people who are currently working on books that are not selling, they're going to be there for a little while, and I don't know what's going to happen. Most of these people that are making books that are not selling tend to be ideologues, whether it's about gender or race or whatever. Feminists, most of them, if not all of them. But nonetheless, this is good news. At least it seems to be. It's promising. We'll see what happens. We'll keep an eye on it, but I thought I would share this with you guys. And again, some of you might be asking, what does that have to do with men's issues? Well, it has to do with it because first off, we're fighting against an ideology that's extremely anti-male, and it's showing up in male spaces. And when I say male spaces, I don't mean that in a gatekeeping kind of way. Obviously, women are welcome to participate. What we don't want is for the industry that mostly men spent money on and built up to become something that does not have their interests. So this is the reason why I say this affects them, because this is something that we enjoy. So
this is a situation where the same people who spit on guys that read comic books, especially socially awkward guys that read comic books, and most especially the socially awkward guys that are at the absolute bottom, you know, the pit below the social ladder.
Mm-hmm.
These are the gatekeepers of social acceptance, essentially, coming into an area where the socially unaccepted go for solace and saying, well, now you can't be here either because we have decided this belongs to us and you can't have it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's being done almost entirely to men. And they're recruiting gals in that, or trying to recruit gals in that area, under that topical umbrella, to go against those guys, to push those guys out of yet another area. And of course, it's a men's issue. And again, it's an attempt to control speech. In what circumstance, if these folks get the control they want over speech, under what circumstance that will still be available will we be able to say it's violent when a woman hits a man because she's offended by something he said? And it's wrong that if a woman beats on a man, he can't defend himself and she won't get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
In a gynocentric environment where it's not just a social attitude of protecting men, in a gynocentric environment like that, where men aren't even allowed to speak up for themselves, and you know, these are guys that they're not just the most socially awkward and the most gate kept. They're also the guys who are gate kept out of any kind of sexual connection with other people as well. So they're not even now allowed to have their fantasy. Here's a Harthoon Paladin pointed that out as well. Like, don't those most socially awkward men dare have sexual fantasies that aren't okayed by them? They're actually now gatekeeping their minds. That's not just totalitarianism. It's direct and overt abuse, right to the people that are already in the worst social position. Mm-hmm. So if somebody comes forward and says this stuff is not a men's issue, they're full of shit.
Yeah. I would like to read some super chats. Hoki Bukisa gives us $3.50 and writes unsolicited opinions on Israel. And Joey Jojo gives us $2 and says, just give Darcy Lewis a comic, goddamn Marvel. Darcy Lewis was the character from the Thor movies, played by Kat Dennings.
Oh, man. I love it every single time Kat Dennings just comes up.
I don't blame him.
Look, Kat Dennings is a beautiful lady. That's exactly my point.
Yeah.
Kat Dennings. Just having that thought go through my mind.
Okay, apparently it was Heart-Hewn, not Hearthune.
Heart.
Use capitals. Use capitals. It's all in lowercase letters, so yeah, or all capitals.
You just
so
want to read it like a compound word. It just comes out with a
sure. Especially when I'm trying to read it real fast in the middle of, like, it comes up while I'm saying the thing, and it's like, oh yeah, this person pointed it out. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So semi-breaking news. We're gonna move on. Semi-breaking news. John Lasseter of Pixar taking leave of absence from Pixar amid missteps. It's never easy to face your missteps, but it's the only way you learn from them, the executive stated. Disney Animation head John Lasseter is taking a leave of absence from Pixar after acknowledging painful conversations and unspecified missteps he wrote in a memo to staff on Tuesday, obtained by The Hollywood Reporter. Lasseter's statement arrived as THR was preparing a story detailing alleged misconduct by the executive at Disney Pixar. Lasseter is best known as one of the founders of Pixar, which began as part of the graphics group at Lucasfilm, along with Ed Catmull. I hope I'm not butchering that. He popularized CGI in animation with early films such as Toy Story, A Bug's Life, and Monsters Incorporated. In 2006, after Disney purchased Pixar, Lasseter was named the chief executive or creative officer of both Pixar and Walt Disney Animation Studios. He has since become the face of all Disney animation, overseeing the recent resurgence of the studio's namesake brand with properties such as Frozen and Moana. Lasseter, who directed Toy Story and Toy Story 2, amongst other Pixar films, produces or executive produces every Pixar project, and he executive produces every WDA feature. That's Walt Disney Animation. While Lasseter has only won 2 Oscars, Pixar has racked up an impressive 8 Best Animated Feature wins. Under Lasseter's purview, Walt Disney Animation has picked up 3 wins, most recently with last year's Zootopia, which we did a review of on Honey Badger Radio that you should check out. Pixar films have grossed over $6 billion at the box office. The Emeryville-based company is set to release their next feature, Coco, this week. Pixar is currently working on a sequel to The Incredibles and the 4th Toy Story installment. WDA will release its The Wreck-It Ralph sequel next year. So what is his letter? His full memo to employees is below. I have always wanted our animation studios to be places where creators can explore their vision with the support and collaboration of other gifted animators and storytellers. This kind of creative culture takes constant vigilance to maintain. It's built on trust and respect and becomes fragile if any members of the team don't feel valued. As a leader, it's my responsibility to ensure that does not happen. And I now believe I have been falling short in this regard. I've recently had a number of difficult conversations that have been very painful for me. It's never easy to face your missteps, but it's the only way to learn from them. As a result, I've been giving a lot of thought to the leader I am today compared to the mentor, advocate, and champion I want to be. It's been brought to my attention that I have made some of you feel disrespected or uncomfortable. That was never my intent. Collectively, you mean the world to me, and I deeply apologize if I have let you down. I especially want to apologize to anyone who has ever been on the receiving end of an unwanted hug or any gesture that they felt crossed the line in any way, shape, or form. No matter how benign my intent, everyone has the right to set their own boundaries and have them respected. In my conversations with Disney, we are united in our commitment to always treat any concerns you have with the seriousness that they deserve and to address them in an appropriate manner. We also share a desire to reinforce the vibrant, respectful culture that has been the foundation of our studio's success since the beginning. And we agree the first step in that direction is for me to take some time away to reflect on how to move forward from here. As hard as it is for me to step away from a job I am so passionate about and a team that I hold in the highest regard, not just as artists but as people, I know it's the best thing for all of us right now. My hope is a 6-month sabbatical will give me the opportunity to start taking better care of myself, to recharge and be inspired, and ultimately return with the insight and perspective I need to be the leader that you deserve. I am immensely proud of this team, and I know you will continue to wow the world in my absence. I wish you all a wonderful holiday season and look forward to working together again in the new year. John.
Okay, so he did a thing that people who are trying to minimize accusations do. And I only caught it because I clicked on the link to the first story that I came across, or in the first story that I came across on this, to an earlier story where his behavior was described. Now, this is still alleged behavior, but it's alleged not just by the women who are accusing him, but by individuals who claim to have witnessed the behavior. A longtime insider is quoted as saying that he saw a woman seated next to Lassiter in a meeting, and this is supposed to be more than 15 years ago, but he said she was bent over and had her arm across her thigh. The best he could describe it was a defensive posture, and Lassiter had his hand on her knee, moving it around. After the encounter, this person asked the woman about what he had seen, and she said it was unfortunate for her to wear a skirt that day, and if she didn't have her hand on her own right leg, his hand would have traveled. The same source said he once noticed an oddly cropped photo of Lassiter standing between two women at a company function. When he mentioned that to a colleague, he was told, "We had to crop it. Do you know where his hands were?" So there's two possibilities here. Either these insiders, and there's other insiders that have talked about this in the other story, but either these insiders are hopping on the coattails of the story and lying about things that they've witnessed, or lying that they've witnessed things they didn't witness in order to sort of get to talk to the media and everything. But they're not giving their names, so that'd be weird. Or this guy had a habit of feeling women up when he was close by to them without asking. And it was tolerated not only by the women, but everyone around them, condoned within the industry. And he's minimizing it to a hug, and he might minimize the hand on the knee story as if there was nothing in it about his hand traveling. When they say stuff like that, they mean up the skirt or up to the ass. And there are people that do that of both sexes that are touchy. When I worked at the gas station, there was a woman that used to come in who was shorter than me, and to get my attention to ask me questions about things. Some of them were obviously necessary questions, and some of them were obviously unnecessary questions, like, where's this thing that's right next to me? She would tap me on the boobs to get the attention she wanted to get the question answered. And I wasn't necessarily deeply offended by it because it was a single touch. But I knew it was something that, most women, if a guy did that to them, they would call it an assault. And it would be creepy and all that, right?
Yeah, it reminds me. It reminds me of cosplayers. I've noticed that when cosplayers are the most vocal ones that are basically like, cosplay is not consent and men shouldn't be, they can't stare, they take pictures without my permission, etc., etc., etc. But then with other females, they let them grope them, they grope them back. It's almost like they have different rules depending on the gender of the person they're hanging out with.
I made a game out of it. I turned it around to make her uncomfortable in a way, because she would reach past my arms to do it and everything, and I noticed that. So I thought, I'd see her coming and I'd pick something up, so she'd have to reach around stuff to get to the boobs and make it obvious what she was doing and everything. And it just because I knew she couldn't resist doing it, but she'd know that I knew what she was doing, and she'd know that I was, making it difficult for her, and I forced her to be really deliberate about it. And my coworkers were like, just tell her to fuck off, and I was like, no, I can laugh at this woman because she really can't do anything else to me. But if she was my boss and I had to deal with that, and I was afraid it was going to affect other ways I got treated on the job, that would have been a very different story. Because then I would have been worried. I would have had reason to worry about my progress in my job and my treatment on the job. So a situation like this, it's not any different when it's a guy. If your boss is doing that to you, that's a different story, and that's the story in this situation. A guy who is a coworker or a boss or somebody who can affect your job, then you have to deal with, do I want to tolerate this? And if you're witnessing it happening to someone else, you're tolerating it, and you're not supporting that person's ability to get away from that and put a stop to that, that's really bad. And that's what it looks like if the witnesses are telling the truth and these women are telling the truth about this guy's behavior. Then what they're talking about is someone who had serious boundary issues, maybe not enough to commit violent assault, maybe not enough to force a sex act on somebody, but enough to try to pass off groping. And it's not necessarily groping if your hand brushes up against somebody when you're standing there, but it's definitely groping if you deliberately put your hands in any of the areas that would be covered by a bikini, or up under somebody's skirt, and don't apologize and leave them there. It's definitely deliberate at that point. That's groping. And I've seen this guy's style of apology over and over again with the people who have admitted shit, like the Clintons, or the not the Clintons, but the news media is finally coming out, after the fact, and saying, well, Bill Clinton should have resigned after the Monica Lewinsky incident. That's the least of the things that he was accused of. The same media has been demanding that a Republican drop out of a race because he's been accused of preying on underage girls. Bill Clinton was accused of rape. They don't have the same standard. The only reason they're talking about Monica Lewinsky now is so that they don't have to talk about the way they behaved over the rape allegations. And whether or not I agree with the way they behaved over the Republican rape allegations, they are hypocritical for not behaving the same way over the Clinton rape allegations. And it's Al Franken, same thing. They're talking and talking and talking about the picture. The picture is the least of the things Franken is accused of. And that is not even a big deal. And there are all kinds of other things that have been talked about. The earliest one being a forced French kiss, which is really, it's nice and sexy when it's something that you're doing on purpose because you want to kiss the other person and they want to kiss you. But it would be incredibly gross to have somebody that you didn't want to kiss force their tongue into your mouth. So if that's true, and I'm not saying that there's any proof of it, but if that's true, it's far worse than faking a grope in a picture because you think it's funny.
Yeah.
Right. So they're not talking about that. They're not talking about any of the other allegations that have come out against him since then, because he's a left guy.
Mm-hmm.
And they're quite happy to trot that picture out over and over again because it's the least of the allegations.
Right.
And you see that with somebody who's guilty like that. Oh yeah, I did something minor that's bad. That is classic. That is classic sociopathic covering up. Oh yeah, you're right. I was bad. I gave an unwanted hug. I'm not going to talk about the other stuff that I did. But if I admit to the unwanted hug, you can't talk about that stuff either. Because I gave you a confession. And that's all you wanted. That you watch for that.
Okay.
Because you're going to see that quite a bit and as this wave of sexual misconduct allegations goes forward. It's the best example of it is I choose to live now as a gay man. But you're going to see that over and over again.
Just one quick thing. This whole thing is really starting to piss me off because I've been involved with the world of film for a while, both in school and extracurricularly, if you want to put it that way. And John Lasseter is one of my, well, if any of these, is probably soon going to be like in the category of people that used to be one of my heroes, right? If these allegations are credible.
Yes.
But it's just like, because Pixar is, in my opinion, the greatest movie studio that there is right now. Because with their body of films, compared to the body of films by most film studios, they've hit more films out of the park in terms of being able to get both critical positive reception and positive reception from their audiences. And also they're just timeless films that they're going to stand the test of time, that people young and old are going to enjoy. When you said Toy Story, I cannot wait for Incredibles 2. I've been looking forward to that sequel for the past 13 years of my life. Up, WALL-E, Toy Story, Bug's Life. I love Bug's Life, very underrated. And just to hear about this sort of thing, how people that I've respected so much for their creative vision in Hollywood, and to do it so well, it's so disappointing to me. I guess this is what you get. Max. I said The Incredibles.
Did you? Oh, well, okay. You didn't say it with enthusiasm.
And the point I would make about that is the phrase "there is a fine line between genius and insanity." That didn't come out of nowhere,
right?
And if you look through history, people who have done great things are people who pursue their interests with passion. And so when they make a misstep, as this guy has said, when they have a bad idea and they pursue that with passion too, it has bad results. And that's the way it is with a lot of historical figures. A good way of putting it is if Martin Luther King Jr., if Dr. King was a philanderer, would that invalidate the civil rights movement? Because I don't think it would. And if he pursued both of those things in his life with passion, if that were the case, would that invalidate the civil rights movement? And I don't think it would. Being wrong about something that you pursue with passion, being catastrophically wrong about something, doesn't invalidate the correctness of what you are right about. And so I think it would not be wrong to still appreciate the genius that is behind those movies without recognizing that genius comes from a human place where dysfunction can live.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, Hannah. It's just when it comes to the issue of sexual misconduct, I guess it's more an issue with me because I have such a sensitivity to that issue. Like, for example, Roman Polanski, that guy directed Rosemary's Baby. He directed Chinatown. He directed The Pianist, all of which are fantastic films, but he's a child rapist. Therefore, I can never pay a single dollar to watch one of his films. And I understand for all of you who enjoy Roman Polanski's films, it's a lot more complicated. It's a very complicated issue to tackle. I'm not going to pass judgment whatsoever on anybody who wants to watch those films. But yeah, for me personally, it's just, God, what's so fucking hard about understanding? Just keep your fucking hands to yourself, especially when you're in a workplace environment. I understand that there's some women that you can work with that look pretty good in a skirt. You don't touch them, especially in a workplace environment. Make sure that you just, why is that so fucking hard to understand?
Well, again, I'm going to wait until the truth comes out before I speak on that. But I don't know what to tell you, man. You have to be in a certain, you're in a certain frame of mind, or it's been done to you, and that's why you do it to others. You know, you're either somebody who's messed up for one reason or other, or you were a victim when you were a child, and then the cycle just continues. So,
Well, Mr. Monkeylint has a point on this. He said, "Forget it, Max. It's Chinatown."
Oh, I get super chats.
That's
I gotta
great.
get through. Hoki Bukisa gives us $5.37. What's with these strange denomination? I mean, I'll take it, but I feel like if I add all this up and maybe like run it through some kind of decoder, I'll get a special message. Anyway, he gives us $5.37. Thank you, Hoki, and says, "Imagine if I got my boss's attention by patting his balls. I mean, you'd get his attention. That much is for sure. You'd get his
That might be
attention.
upsetting.
Don't do it too hard though, please. Just don't even graze them. Just make it a light pat." And French Honey Badger gives us $2 and says,
Bonjour.
"MLK was a philanderer, by the way."
Yeah, I responded to that in the chat as the broadcaster because I have it open and pointed out that's why I said that.
Yeah.
No, we don't discount what he did because we might, because his behavior might have been disapproved of.
Didn't he get with Malcolm X's wife?
See, now I never really looked into it. I looked at enough of the information to be like, okay, well, this isn't just an allegation. It's more than just an allegation. Okay, but it doesn't really not that I'm saying the behavior doesn't matter, but in a historical context, it doesn't impact what he did.
Yeah.
So, like I said, this is, and this I'm going to use this, to bring home a point I've made before. Men, when they go through these things, when men's humanity shows, and the fact that they are capable of having dysfunctional aspects of character just as much as greatness, and that having greatness in your character doesn't necessarily preclude having dysfunctional aspects on top, we accept that as a reality, that we don't have to say, well, no, those dysfunctions aren't dysfunctional because of this person's greatness. That makes philandering not bad anymore because Martin Luther King did it. And we don't necessarily have to say civil rights are invalid because Martin Luther King was a philanderer, right? But when we pedestalize a woman, we can't acknowledge her dysfunction. And part of the reason is, you put a woman on his pedestal, and you put her on a high pedestal especially, she's always going to take people down with her when she falls off. Always. There's always going to be collateral damage to a woman's fall from a pedestal. And it's going to be bad. And the higher the pedestal, the worse the damage. And quite frequently, the higher the pedestal, the worse the dysfunction that causes that fall. Because people who are high energy, passionate people very often have either stress-induced or previous abuse-induced dysfunction as part of their makeup. And those things often go hand in hand. There really is. There's a fine line between genius and insanity. There's a fine line between greatness and dysfunction. And it's not to say that automatically, everybody that's great is going to be an abuser of some sort or another. But there will be something just as bad in their character as there is something good. And maybe they've got the power to resist it, and maybe they don't. But until we start treating women the same as we do men when we come across these dysfunctions, we're going to have that issue of putting women up on pedestals. And when they fall, they take the people around them down with them. And these men, their organizations, their companies, their industries, their institutions that they're involved in will go on, except for maybe Weinstein. He's got a pretty serious situation there, but for the most part, Congress isn't going to be destroyed. The Democrat Party's not going to be destroyed. Disney's not going to be destroyed. Hollywood might not be the same as before, but it'll go on in some form or another. Because mostly men are the ones being accused, and the ones that have actually done wrong things will be accountable, or they'll be held accountable. And those who are innocent may be held accountable as if they were guilty as well. But the industry will continue. If this was women, the entire thing would come crashing down. So that's something that the difference in how we respond in these situations needs to be, the gap there needs to be closed. The accountability gap needs to be closed.
Yeah. And Max, you can always take solace in, if you want, just instead of seeing Lasseter as your hero, you still have Brad Bird. So, there's...
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, Brad Bird, he's the fucking man. Like, look, dude, Tomorrowland, that was a misstep. Everybody gets a mulligan. Everybody has a bad day at the office. Even Spielberg, he directed The Terminal. That movie was a piece of crap. Brad Bird, hopefully one day you get to direct a Star Wars movie, man, because I fucking love you.
Yeah.
The Incredibles, I've loved that movie ever since I first saw it.
Iron Giant.
Iron Giant, one of the most underrated movies ever. Please go watch that movie.
Yeah.
If you have never, any of you have never seen the Iron Giant, treat yourself. Treat yourself. It's amazing.
Tears will flow.
Yes,
tears will flow, but they will be manly. They'll be manly tears. Okay, so with that said, we're going to go ahead and get into the after show, but I'll give you guys a peek at what we're looking at here. We're going to be taking a personality test or a personality quiz that is titled, Can We Guess Your Personality Based on How You Perceive Women? Women are sometimes perceived as devious and scheming, as virtuous and nurturing, as mysterious goddesses and better halves, or as equal human beings with all sorts of strengths and weaknesses attributed to their gender. What does your perception of women tell us about you? And we're going to be taking this quiz with our after show patrons. So if you want to become a patron and engage in this kind of stuff, by the way, I don't know what it's going to tell us. We're just going to basically act like one collective MRA fedora tipper and see what the results are going to be. So that should be fun. If you want to be a part of stuff like this, you need to become a patron. So go to www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio and go ahead and pledge the appropriate amount, and you'll be able to come and watch our show. If you pledge a little more, you can come and join the show and join the conversation. So, with that being said, don't forget that this is Honey Badger Radio. Please share, subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notifications button, the usual beeswax. And also, if you had trouble watching the stream on YouTube, just go to Twitch. I watch the Twitch chat. I look at it while we're doing the show here. I'll put an emote in there to prove it. One of these glorious Twitch emotes. Let me see if I can. Oh shit, Bob Ross. Fucking hey, cool story, Bob. So I just popped it in there so you know that I'm watching. So you guys can use Twitch if you want to. If you don't have an account, just make one, because I notice that it tends to be a lot stabler. Let me look and see if there's any other super chats before I get us out of here. I do have one. TK Mao gave us $2 and says, I'm just showing love for Mike, smiling at absurdity. So there you go, Mike. That's $2 for you. $2 American. I think.
Well, hey, have a smile, a British smile. I'm afraid they're a bit crooked tooth. That's all I got.
All right, thank you guys for being such gracious guests, and I want to thank my panelists for coming on, and I want to thank the people who helped me do the write-ups. You guys make this as great as it is. I don't know how great that is, though, but I'm guessing it does okay. So thanks for joining us on the Polecat Cast. Thank you, Max, Hannah, and Mike for coming on with me. And this is it for me. I will be taking off for Calgary on Thursday, so I won't be talking to you guys for a little while. But well, maybe we'll do something while we're out there. I don't know. I'm going to try to do some stuff either while I'm in Canada or on my way. So we'll talk to you guys next time. Thank you for joining us on HBR News. We'll